Chris Cuomo destroys Candace Owens? Welcome to the Thought Decoders YouTube channel, where we teach you logic, we teach you how to state and clearly defend your faith. Today we have a reaction for you. We're reacting to a recent video by Patrick Bet David. He brought Chris Cuomo and Candace Owens on, and Chris Cuomo absolutely destroyed Candace Owens. And he moved on to destroy the entire audience and even the host, Patrick Bet Davis. I watched this, y'all, and I was completely shocked at Chris Cuomo's his just skills as an interlocutor. He's really sharp. I guess he used to be an attorney, but I think the news reporting didn't show this aspect of his thought. And we want to kind of like just look at some of the dialectic and the movements of this conversation, how the thoughts and the arguments on both sides ebb and flow. And so let's take a look at it just to give a quick summary about what occurred to contextualize the clip. This is what happened. So Patrick Bet Davis, the host of the show, he begins to situates. He offers some context to his question that he will ask Chris Cuomo, which will, be the essence of this clip. The question, he begins by saying that there's a tech company that has a safe software in order to uses Face ID in order and uses Face ID to make voting safe. And Patrick Bet Davis just mentions that through technology, the suggestion is that technology could make it easier for people to vote. He then pulls up a map and shows that 50% of states require voter ID. And his question comes to Chris Cuomo. Why is it just 50% of states? Does that make sense that so many other states do not require individuals to have their IDs in order to vote? So Chris Cuomo, in his response to Patrick Bet Davis, he basically says that there is a correlation between the level of civic engagement and poverty of individuals. The lower they are below the threshold of poverty, the less likely they are to engage in government, and especially in civic rights such as voting. Candace Owens begins to jump all down his throat. But that's not the rest of the argument. The rest of the argument is, if this is true, then the voter ID requirements unfairly privilege some voters over others. And so this is the argument why voter ID should not be accepted. This is Chris Cuomo's presentation of a Democrat argument, or a left-leaning argument, politically left argument for why Chris voter ID should not be required. Candace Owens then responds and she says, "Oh, that's a lie. That's a lie." And Chris Cuomo responds back that it may be a lie. Chris Cuomo replies that it can be wrong without being a lie. And I thought this was so impulsive of Candace Owens to say that's a lie. That's a lie. Just philosophically, you can say something false without it being a lie. A lie involves a false statement with an intention to deceive, and people can be sincerely wrong. They can really believe what they're talking about. And this is the point that Chris Cuomo was making. So Chris Cuomo rehearses his views for making voting online. Chris Cuomo talks about how he was an advocate for voting online, and he was hammered by special agents in the U.S. Government who told him that that so much fraud would occur if individuals were able to vote online. Candace Owens then kind of interrupts him midway through his thought and asks if she can ask him a question, and it's a closed-ended question. She asked him, should people and citizens or individuals in America be required to have voter ID? And Chris Cuomo said no. I guess she thought she was going to trap him, but she didn't trap him. He gave a straightforward, honest answer that to his mind. And so at this point, Patrick Bet Davis, the host of the channel, interrupts Bud's in. He makes a good point that Cuomo didn't actually respond to, and he basically said that if you owned a nightclub and the age limit is 21 years old, should they have? And then Chris Cuomo interrupts and said, yes, they should have voter. Yeah, they should have ID, an ID to get in. And he said, and Patrick Bet David said, why? And Chris Cuomo said, because you need to know who they are. And Patrick Bet David then went on to make an interesting point that, yeah, well, that if you need if you need IDs for a nightclub, then what about something that is so important on a national level for America? Shouldn't you also need ID then? Chris Cuomo is silent. One guy on the panel that began to ask Chris Cuomo about the border, and Chris Cuomo didn't, as if Chris Cuomo would disagree, but Chris Cuomo agreed that that's a huge problem, that is going to cost Americans and taxpayers a lot of money in the future, and that it's the number one security issue. But he goes on to say that the problem is the asylum laws are economic based, whatever that means. I guess that means if you can get asylum if you don't have money or if you're poor or something like that, or it may be that you have to have money to get asylum. So he didn't explain, but he says the asylum laws are economic based, which is interesting. So this leads us to the clip. Now it is at this point, after they have this side a bunny trail about immigration policies, that Candace Owens begins to question Chris Cuomo as if he's been insincere this whole time, as if these aren't his actual views, which I mean, they seem like they are. And that's where we're going to pick up at this point, because this is where it gets really, really interesting.
Is different than intelligent. Listen, go ahead.
No, I'm being serious, because to take this position that you don't think we should have ID while acknowledging the influx of people at the border and pretending that there's some study that shows that there's not actually fraud, while also acknowledging that you have no idea because you can't give them ID. You can't give them ID. How can you, if you're saying you can just go in and you can vote, right? And you're saying we know there was no fraud, it defies common sense, right? So what are you defending when you say something like, I do not believe that Americans should have to have ID? What are you actually defending and protecting?
ID.
So Candace Owens, her argument here is that if people don't get IDs, then you can't prove that that is fraud, which doesn't actually make sense if you think about it. I guess it seems like you could prove that a person, like for example, couldn't you prove that a person didn't have an ID? Like if they didn't have an ID, could you prove that? So I don't know what. It seemed like she was making a point, but her point, that was a nonsense point. Actually,
to vote.
Actually defending and protecting.
ID to vote. Do not believe that you're a government remedy away from the problem. 2, I respect the data, and they keep looking at this, keep trying to find that people are voting illegally.
Who specifically? What study? Who did the study?
The Heritage Foundation, the Cato Institute, places on the right, places on the left, the government. I mean, look, you can say, oh, they're all
So she thought she was going to get him. She keeps thinking that if she asks him a question that is a detailed question, where he needs to answer something with specific detail, that she's going to get him, that he's not going to answer or something like that. She did it earlier that I mentioned, with asking him should individuals have uh, voting voting IDs, and he said no. And so now she asks him again. Uh, what study shows these? Because she just said that he's pretending, and now he just quoted some sources.
Bought off by big pharma or whatever. I'm just saying they study this all the time, trying to catch illegal voting. Catch it, and if you catch it, then make the case. Look, you lock me into a yes no.
So he just said, if you catch it, then make the case. So in other words, there is no evidence that there is this massive voter fraud.
Well, I say no because I'm not a fan of it as a remedy. I think there are policy arguments against it.
I don't want it as a remedy. I want it as just a full stop rule that you should have to have an ID to vote. I'm not trying to fix it. That it can't. It's necessarily going to be broken if we do not have a system in which we know.
Where is the proof that there's all this illegal voting?
Hold on. If you
silence. Did you catch that? Candace Owens. Look at that. You can kind of see a smirk on her face right now because she knows she's got. Let's watch that again. Where's that proof? Where's the proof? He hammers her. The public intellectual of the conservative right, Candace Owens. He hammers her and silences her. Candace Owens, who always has a lot to say. Candace Owens. Interesting. So let's watch that again.
Is the proof that there's all this illegal voting?
Hold on. If you have to mail in your vote, don't show any ID or any proof. That's
look.
They can't
When
ever catch that.
When you go and vote, right? You go there. They open the book in front.
So that's called an argument from silence, or an argument from ignorance. Since those people don't have voters ID, then we can't prove that they're catching, that they're doing fraud, since they're mailing in their votes. So basically they're explaining the lack of evidence, and they're not explaining the evidence. They're explaining the lack of evidence. But the problem with that is this: an explanation is not an argument. You can explain your view all day. I mean, you can explain the parts of your view, why you think it, why you like it. But if you haven't given evidence for the view, you're just sharing your view. Still, Chris Cuomo is trying to establish, is it true? Right? We're evaluating the view, and you don't explain your view when you're evaluating it. You present evidence for it.
Front of you, right? They say, where do you live? You have this little card that they've sent you, right? They see your address. They say, if they see that you're me, they say, who are you voting for, Chris? Which is really great. And then they mark you off in the book. All right. So it's not that you just come in and you do it and you go. Do I think that's the best system? Of course not.
So Cuomo just made the point that there is some system of checking who is voting. They send you a card. Your address is on the card. When you go in with the card, they ask you who you are and et cetera, et cetera. And he made the point that they ask him who he's voting for, and he says that's not great. Maybe he was kidding. I don't know. Maybe they ask him that where he's from, but I don't think they're supposed to ask you who you're voting for. That's none of their business.
Would it be better if you know who everybody is? Yeah, of course. From a safety and security standpoint, fine. Well, then why are you against it? Because three things, really. One, I'm not a big fan of more government involvement in the lives of people. Two, I don't know the proof. I'm just, look again,
government.
You don't have to, it is the government. It absolutely is.
It's not more government because you already have an ID to do everything else.
But these people don't have IDs, and that's the point. If you said
you have to get go out and get a special different from your driver's license ID, that would be asking for more government.
Are you trolling right now?
I think he's trolling me.
Are you honestly? No. If you are, if you're doing this, like, are you trolling or are you being straight up
I
right
just
now?
can't
Look,
believe this.
do I want you guys to play with your position a little bit? Yes, because I think that you just assume things that can get you into trouble. You are assuming that our
Chris Cuomo says Patrick Bet Davis says David. Patrick Bet Davis asked him, is he trolling? Is he serious, or is he trying to elicit a reaction from the audience and the panelists? And he says there's a part of him that wants to kind of challenge the audience and the panelists to think and reflect on their assumptions. And he basically says that they assume a lot. But that's just the nature of people in general. We all kind of assume things when we're not philosophically reflective on our assumptions. And so uh, the thing about uh, be, being in a conversation that is critical and challenges us to present evidence for our views is that we have to question certain assumptions that are not defended or justified.
our system is broken and our elections don't work. That's what you're saying.
That's
You're
what we're
saying
assuming.
that the voting numbers are wrong and that it is rife with fraud, right? And I'm saying none of you can prove that.
Yeah.
You just hung on it. You can insult me. Although, if you sign a little waiver that you won't sue and you do it to my face, there'll be a different outcome. What I'm saying is, look, I don't believe the system is broken and it's rife with fraud. And I will tell you something.
So now he moves in the look at the panel, silent. Candace Owens, she stopped talking. She's just looking with a smirk on her face. Patrick Bet Davis Patrick Bet David has nothing to say besides, "Are you joking?" Which is that's an argument from incredulity. I can't believe you say that, which is not really evidence for your view. Just because you can't believe what I've said doesn't mean what you're saying is true.
I've been watching what's been happening very, very closely after the last election. And I have to tell you, it was upsetting how quiet so many people were who say they're concerned about the elections, that when Truth the Vote came forward with their counsel under penalty of losing their licenses in court, and they said, we have no proof of any of the things that we have asserted in open court, and nobody said anything. They just let it go. Why didn't that bother you?
When everybody gets a mail-in ballot and you have video evidence of people dumping multiple ballots,
why did
that were
Truth
mailed
the
up-
Vote say we have no proof?
No. Stop telling me not to believe my own eyes. It's an insult. It is.
So she brings up the video footage that showed people putting ballots in a box. Then she characterizes Chris Cuomo's response, which is, why did the people who publicized these videos say in court that they had no evidence if they did? And these are attorneys, so I'm pretty sure they would know what evidence is. I'm not saying, me personally, I'm not saying that there was I don't know what occurred, right? I'm just looking at the arguments, and that's what we do as philosophers. I'm just looking at the who's right and who's wrong in terms of their arguments and who has the stronger argument. And sometimes I think people on the right have strong arguments, and sometimes people on the left have strong arguments. It just depends on the individuals and the people and how subtle they are in their thinking. But on this podcast, the most subtle thinker clearly was Chris Cuomo. I mean, he shut the audience down just a second ago, and he's about to shut Candace Owens down again.
Why did they say that?
Listen, I don't care what Truth the Vote said. It is an insult to the American people always to tell them not to believe their own eyes. Okay, we saw.
That is a red herring. A red herring is when you bring up a response or a complaint with to an argument that has nothing to do with the truth of the argument. It may be an insult to the American people, right? But does that mean that it's not true? Does that mean it's true? For example, if it's an insult to the American people that those videos, the attorneys who publicized those videos and who went public saying that was election fraud, those same attorneys, if it's an insult to the American people that those same attorneys went into a court and said that there was no evidence, those two things can be true. It can be true that that's an insult, and it can be true what the attorney said in court that they didn't have any evidence, which implies that those videos were not evidence of election fraud. So this is a red herring. It's an objection from offense. I'm offended by what you said. Okay, but what about the truth? It looks like this is a debate, Candace Owens. So what do you think about the truth of what he said?
All the video evidence of people going with multiple bags and slowly just inserting more and more ballots that are in there. That's what happens when you mail out a ballot automatically, which is something they want to do in perpetuity in California. I think they've already passed the law in perpetuity. Everyone who, even if you don't ask for it, you're just going to get a mail-in ballot. That allows people to then harbor those ballots and then to dump them off. You can have one person doing all of the votes, okay? And to vote multiple times. You have no idea if that individual ever received their ballot, first and foremost, or who is filling out that ballot on behalf of them. And when you see people on video that are actually doing these things, and then you say, we have no proof, you are doing the thing that the mainstream media always does, which is the reason that the people are now disillusioned, right? They have no interest in the mainstream media anymore because they know that you use this terminology. We have no proof. We have no proof. We have no proof that it causes myocarditis. We have no proof that it's impacting. We have no proof that masks don't work. Okay? You just have to stop doing it, Chris. Honestly.
I don't see how any of those things go together.
It's the argument not to believe. It's the argument not to believe your own eyes.
Listen, you can say
so
you
we
believe
tell
all
you
your
that
own
we
eyes,
have
but
proof.
Cuomo just pointed out that those were irrelevant. Those were more red herrings when he said, I don't see how any of those things go together. The things like what does I think she was referring to the vaccination. What does the fact that the vaccination causes myotis? If that's true, which again I don't care and I don't I don't know. I just care about the arguments and who's presenting strong evidence. I'm a political independent, and I mean sometimes I'm convinced by people on the left, sometimes on the right if they're centrists, but radicals on each side are kind of like disturbing to me. But I'm just saying that to say this, that I have no dog in this fight whatsoever. I actually have sympathies for the left and the right, which is weird, but I do. Because on the left and the right you have people, and I care about people. I'm a Christian, and that's my bias. Uh, so, but he's going to get her again. Listen,
people who gave you the video went into court, could not prove it, wound up showing that the videos don't mean what they were saying they meant in open court where they had the chance.
The person who dropped.
Right. So the people who use truth to vote, you brought those videos to court, and after presenting that as I guess it's the record of evidence, they confessed or admitted or asserted or claimed or whatever that I'm not an attorney. I don't know the legal jargon. But Chris Cuomo is saying that they went into the court and they claimed that they didn't have any evidence, but they had the footage. So the implication is that the footage, the video clip, is not evidence.
That video that was coming out of, just as one example, Fulton County. Her name is, she goes by Jackie Daly, I believe is what she goes by, down in Texas. And she is now suing them for the smears and the lies that they said about her, because it was completely false. The video that she showed was 100% true. And she is suing a ton of networks. As
Just because she's suing doesn't mean she's right.
Well, if she was wrong, they would have arrested her.
That's true.
No, they wouldn't necessarily have arrested her for saying that she thought she saw something. And there is litigation going on once we get past the drama of who gets to be the prosecutor.
Can I help you out?
No.
Oh, no, I'm not.
I'm enjoying this.
It's just so dishonest.
I'm going to try to help you because I'm actually with my guy Vinny on this, and I'm with the audience, and I'll tell you why. And I'm actually going to.
Because you're scared of the mob.
You think I'm scared? Nobody gets more hate comments than this guy right here, and I love it.
They're messaging right now.
I want all of it. Here's the deal.
Okay, Princess.
You said very poignantly, yeah. I try to tell my kids how to feel. Good luck with it. And then I try to tell my wife, and what you're trying to argue policy wise. Everyone here
I wouldn't bring up a
is
person's
looking at
family.
what's going in the border, and they're just like, no.
I agree.
No,
you should be.
I'm not buying this crap.
You should
These
be, and you should
people
vote
are
on
coming
it.
in. They don't have IDs. We were told in 2020 that if you require ID, it's racist. I own a bar in South Beach. Okay, come on down, guys. You got to be 21. You have to have an ID. If you want to fly, you need an ID. This whole ID is racist, is BS. So these people feel this way because they're seeing what's going on. The old Candace, don't believe my lying eyes over here. Whatever the argument is, they're just like, nah, not buying it. But I have a question for Candace. Yes or no?
I always
here we
give
go.
a yes
Candace,
or no. Yeah.
My wallet got stolen recently, literally. And I currently don't have an ID. Literally. Can I vote?
You're going to have to figure out how to. You have a passport? You got to figure that out.
I do have a passport.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. If it happens to be
I'm
that,
saying,
if it happens to be,
you said that Trump voters are not a monolith. There's individuals.
Correct.
So, and if you go to those states, the 12 states or whatever that don't require ID, they're all blue states. So what? They're just going to be blue or blue.
We have to govern for the majority.
There are also states that have high populations.
So what would happen if someone literally loses their ID a few days before the election?
Listen, I am telling you
right now. I'm just asking a question.
This is not helpful, by the way. If your goal is to help me, this is why I said no.
So we'll stop there. There you have it, people. There you have it. Chris Cuomo destroys Candace Owens. I think it's a great video. So just to summarize what happened is Chris Cuomo silenced Candace Owens because her main assumption in her argument for why we need voting ID is that there's so much fraud. When he pushed her for the evidence, she was silent. All she did was explain how certain policies could potentially lead to someone abusing those policies, which Chris Cuomo rightly pointed out again that wasn't evidence. That's just speculation about what could happen or a possibility. But yeah, so I think in this situation, Chris Cuomo actually absolutely destroyed Candace Owens, and I was completely shocked because I thought I didn't know Chris Cuomo was so sharp. I would watch him on his as an anchor man or a journalist or person on TV sharing the news, a news anchor, and I would watch him, and I kind of got a sense back then that he was a centrist or kind of centered. He seemed a little more reasonable and seemed tentative, and he seemed to show an instinct not to overstate things. And when people do that, then they are tough cookies to beat because they're already kind of modest. They're already intellectually humble, willing to listen, willing to learn and grow. And I think that's what he displayed. And you can't beat a guy like that if you're just a person who just holds positions dogmatically and don't know why you hold those positions. You can't beat a person who is willing to hear all sides because they are the people who learn which arguments are the strongest for each side. And that's why he was able to give the argument from that liberal, neoliberal, or a classical liberal. I don't know who exactly makes those arguments. I assume they're Democrats or people on the left, but he was able to rehearse their argument and defend it, and then go on the attack against the arguments that Candace Owens gave. Now, there may be someone who gives a much better argument than Candace Owens gave. I mean, uh, she's not a scholar or anything, but so that's not to say that her position is completely wrong. Her argument was just not strong, and she had no evidence for her claims, obviously. But thanks for joining the Thought Decoder with Sean Mixon, and always remember to think better.